recently added in the last several months. But they're all in Britain. Now, Joe, I'm not a solicitor. I'm not a barrister. I do not wear a wig to court the way they do. But in many ways, we borrowed our criminal justice system from our English neighbors. So there are a lot of similarities. One marked distinction is that we have a confrontation clause that requires witnesses against us to appear in court. They don't quite have the same thing. So you may expect to see victims testify by remote, maybe even with a barrier, hiding their identity. But generally speaking, the process is pretty similar. You have the jurors, you have a judge, and you have a criminal prosecution that would mostly look pretty similar to what we have. All right, Candy Salas, thank you. As always, appreciate it. Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, pack your bags and your patience. This 4th of July weekend is expected to be a busy one at airports. What you need to know before you head to your holiday weekend destinations. Up first after the break, a local lawmaker is now looking to be the first transgender member of Congress. She's going to join us to talk about her historic... We're back with an alarming new report about the conditions inside one of America's most notorious detention centers. An independent United Nations investigator is calling for the U.S. to shut down Guantanamo Bay. She said detainees continue to face cruel and inhumane treatment. NBC News correspondent Allison Barber has the details.
Cruel, inhuman, and degrading. That's how a scathing 23-page report from an independent investigator describes conditions at the United States' notorious Guantanamo Bay Detention Center.
The suffering of those detained is profound and it's ongoing.
The report's author, Funua Neal Lee, is the first UN independent investigator to visit the detention center since it was created 21 years ago. Part of her mission, assessing the rights of detainees past and present at Guantanamo Bay.
I receive all requested access to former and current detention facilities.
She reports that conditions have improved substantially since the first detainees were transferred, but she is still expressing serious concerns about what she saw during her visit.
The Guantanamo Bay detention infrastructure entails near constant surveillance, forced cell extractions, undue use of restraints, and other arbitrary non-controlled implementation.
Guantanamo Bay opened in the wake of the September 11th attacks off the shore of the United States to house detainees of the George W. Bush administration's war on terror.
We're getting vital information necessary to do our jobs, and that's to protect the American people.
But many detainees never faced criminal charges. Its existence has faced backlash for years, from protests in the streets.
We are not afraid!
To the Senate.
Guantanamo Bay is an international embarrassment to our nation, to our ideals.
Then Vice President Biden supporting his boss Barack Obama in his goal of closing the camp.
Do you think that you will succeed in getting Guantanamo Bay closed?
That is my hope and expectation.
Now, years later, President Biden still trying to make good on that expectation. In the last 21 years, nearly 800 men have been detained there. Now, down to 30. And according to the UN report, 19 have never been charged with a crime.
Guantanamo Bay is, and always has been, a human rights disaster.
Wells Dixon has represented Guantanamo detainees since 2005, including Majid Khan, who pled guilty in a military tribunal of terrorism-related crimes and spent more than 16 years at the facility before being released earlier this year.
Majid has described his time in Guantanamo as death by 1,000 cuts. Arbitrary rules, inconsistent rules, punishment for no apparent reason, deprivation of rights, lack of medical care.
The United States saying in a submission to the UN that it disagrees in significant respect to the and legal assertions in the report, but that it will review the recommendations and take appropriate action. A spokesperson for the State Department admitted that torture occurred at Guantanamo, but insists highly skilled and trained physicians are now providing care for the detainees.
The special rapporteur said that we have not provided adequate rehabilitation to torture victims. I was very sensitive to the unique medical and including physical and psychological needs of the individuals who remain in detention at that facility.
As for Dixon, he says Guantanamo Bay now.
My hope is that the Biden administration studies very carefully the findings and conclusions of this report and takes them to heart. And if the administration does that, then I am confident that it will be able to close Guantanamo.
Our thanks to Ellison Barber for that report. NBC News reached out to the White House for comment, but was directed to the State Department for additional questions. As you just heard, President Biden has previously said he wants to close Guantanamo, but there is no plan to do that at this moment. International headlines now, starting with new developments on that short-lived rebellion in Russia. NBC News foreign correspondent Claudio Lavaga joined us with the latest on that and other world headlines. Claudio, good morning.
To the president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko. Lukashenko also said that Wagner mercenaries were offered an abandoned military base if they want to join their leader. This comes just after the Wagner group's short that's raising questions about Putin's leadership. Let's head over to southwest China, where flash flooding triggered landslides that killed several people just yesterday. At least 3 are still missing and more than 900 people have been evacuated. China has been experiencing extreme weather these last few weeks, including heavy rainfall in the southern regions and a record-breaking heat in Beijing. And we end this short tour of the world in Canada, where some couples are taking date night to a new level. These husbands are on the move with their wives in tow, competing in the so-called life-carrying contest. Husbands strap their wives to their backs and actually run through an obstacle course. Some of the couples have had a competitive edge, finding creative ways to carry their partners to the finishing line. Now, this kind of competition is a Finnish tradition originating around the 18th century, and it's all for one free beer, which I'm sure they're going to use to wash down some pain relief medication, because that looks like, you know, the recipe for back pain.
I mean, they should get at least 2 beers, Claudio. At least 2 beers for all of that. Yes.
What about the wife? Yes.
Exactly. No kidding. All right, Claudio. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Turning now to Delaware, where one local lawmaker hopes to make history, becoming the first openly transgender person to be sworn into Congress. Her name is Sarah McBride. She currently serves as state senator and is the highest-ranking in the country. She's running at the federal level in the House, hoping to fill the seat of Representative Lisa Blunt Rochester. McBride announced the launch of her campaign on Monday, and she likely won't be the only one vying for that. State Senator Sarah McBride joining us now. More about all this. Senator, good to have you with us. You are no stranger to being the first of anything in Washington. In fact, back in 2012, you were the first openly transgender person to work at the White House as an intern for the Obama administration. What are these achievements? And what would it mean to be the first openly transgender member of Congress?
Well, first off, good morning. It's great to join you. Those experiences, from working in the White House to speaking at the Democratic National Convention in 2016 to now serving as the first openly transgender state senator in the country, have demonstrated to me the power that if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. Democracy only works if it includes all of us. We only have